Well, hey everyone, and welcome to the Edison East Lake neighborhood in the city of Phoenix. We're located just about 3 miles to the east of downtown. My name's Dave Hondula. I'm an associate professor in our School of Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning and one of the co-leads for our Climate and Heat IRT with CAP LTER. Today the temperature's just crossed 100 degrees as it's about noon in mid-September, and while that would be hot by most standards, today is a breath of cool air. This summer we've shattered some of our heat records here in Phoenix, more than 50 days with daily high temperatures above 110 Fahrenheit. And it's against this backdrop of a warming climate in what was already the hottest large metropolitan area in the United States that CAP is deeply embedded in understanding how people and ecosystems are impacted by hot weather and other climate extremes, and also what people are doing to impact the nature of the heat we experience here in Phoenix. And it's those connections between people and the environment and ecosystems that bring us here to the Edison East Lake neighborhood. I'll flip the camera around just for a moment so you can get a sense of the surroundings. We are focused here in Edison East Lake because this neighborhood is slated for a massive redevelopment project in the coming years with a large investment from the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Authority. This will give us an unprecedented opportunity to understand how different design strategies can impact the urban climate at a scale on the order of multiple city blocks. This type of work has only been possible in a simulation environment previously. So CAP researchers from the Climate and Heat IRT, the Urban Design IRT, and others have really become embedded in a number of processes happening here and around the Edison East Lake neighborhood. And we'd like to introduce you to some of those over the next few minutes and give you a bit of a tour around the neighborhood. We're going to meet a graduate student who's doing some modeling work, trying to understand the climate dynamics in this area. We're going to see some of our monitoring capabilities that we've deployed here in Edison East Lake. And we're going to introduce you to our friend Marty, who's really helping us understand urban environments like never before. So we hope you look forward to this tour, and let's head inside for a few moments to cool off with Peter to tell us about some of our modeling efforts.
Oh, hi there. I'm Peter Crank. I'm a PhD candidate here at ASU, and we're here in the Shade Lab where we study the thermal environment and how the buildings, the neighborhoods are affecting the heat as well as other atmospheric variables that we experience. So what we specifically are studying here with this project is the Edison East Lake neighborhood, which is a neighborhood in central Phoenix that the city has deemed ready for redevelopment in their public housing projects. And so what we are doing is we are modeling and measuring both what the neighborhood currently is to see what the thermal environment is for these residents as it currently stands. But then we're also looking to see what the proposed changes are and how those would affect the thermal environment, how it could make things cooler, more comfortable for residents, and address some of the concerns that the residents may have. This is the type of work that we frequently do here. And in this project specifically, we are considering how the incorporation of that green space can affect both the thermal conditions, i.e. how warm or cool it is, but also how that affects the overall mental well-being of the community.
We're complementing the modeling work you heard described by Peter with efforts to monitor the weather and climate in the Edison East Lake neighborhood. And our monitoring efforts are intended to fill two critical roles. One, provide a rich source of validation data that Peter and other CAP scientists can use to understand how well those fluid dynamics models are behaving and how we might improve them. We'll also be looking at the weather data over the long term to see what types of changes are actually realized in terms of microclimate impacts that could benefit the residents here. We have a handful of weather stations that are mounted on utility poles like the one we're coming upon here. You can see we have an outdoor hobo sensor just up on the light pole there. We also have 2 rooftop weather stations in Edison East Lake, and those are measuring the full suite of weather parameters, including wind speed and direction and solar radiation. But perhaps our most interesting and innovative efforts to monitor microclimate conditions here come in the form of our friend called Marty. And with that, I'd like to hand it off to my colleague Jenny, who will introduce you to our mobile weather station.
Hi, I'm Jenny Vanoss of the School of Sustainability, and this is our urban biometeorological cart. It can tell us everything about what a human is experiencing based on the thermal and radiative environment. So each sensor here can measure different parameters of the environment. We have 3 net radiometers that are measuring incoming and outgoing long and shortwave radiation. We also have UV sensors to tell us about the ultraviolet radiation in the environment. This sensor measures temperature and relative humidity. We have wind speed and direction, and then of course we have the location, so we know the exact location of where all these measurements are taken, and we can integrate this into values to tell us about a human's experience in especially an urban environment. And so we use this CART in a lot of our extreme heat and urban design studies to try to understand the influence of surfaces and shading and surface types on a human's experience. So Paul Casio will now tell us a little bit more about the Urban Design IRT.
The Urban Design IRT has been working in close collaboration with other IRTs to establish, maintain, and expand several key partnerships that are central to the Urban Design IRT work, but nothing really more substantial than the partnership on the revitalization of Edison Eastlake with the City of Phoenix. Edison Eastlake really is that unique opportunity at the neighborhood scale to better understand those governance and institutions that support the design of sustainable and resilient urban ecological infrastructure. Being embedded within the planning and design process from the earliest stages really has provided the opportunity to put past CAP data, long-term data, into action as part of the project. Also, it's offered the opportunity to innovate around new forms and new methods, particularly in terms of things like the heat walks, to really inform design. It's also allowed us to, secondly, to measure the pre and then after the construction, the post conditions within this neighborhood at a scale that is really important for urban climate. And then finally, and perhaps the most important, is to really think about how we can have an evidence-based urban design approach of an urban ecology for cities that really influences that microclimate outcome for the health, wellness, and equity issues within our cities.
The last highlight we'd like to share with you from our work here in Edison Eastlake is that we conducted a community heat walk here 2 Septembers ago on a hot day like today. This was an event we put together in partnership with the Nature Conservancy and our local Museum of Walking. And the heat walk involved residents and the Marty Cart taking a 1-mile walk through the neighborhood with a real focus on the thermal environment, thermal conditions, and human perceptions. As our residents moved through the neighborhood, accompanied by researchers who were conducting walking interviews, we heard from them about how they felt about the environment, how much shade they perceived to be, what features they thought could improve the neighborhood. And we also collected critical biometeorological data about their thermal sensation, about their thermal preference in these field guides. We stopped at about 10 different locations in the neighborhood and asked them a predefined set of questions that we could use as social measures to compare against the environmental data we were collecting. This was one of our stops early in the walk here in Edison Park. But let's head to the other side of the neighborhood to look at a contrasting case where people said they felt much different, but the environmental conditions were in fact identical. And here we are on Van Buren Street. It's loud. This is a busy surface street. Although it was measured to be just as hot as Edison Park, people here said they felt hotter, said they felt less comfortable. And we think the critical factor of perceived control of the thermal environment influenced their scores in that manner. People here just have a harder time finding relief from the heat, and even if they're not standing in the shade, the absence of the opportunity for shade makes them feel hotter. This is just one example of how we're trying to combine physical and social science to understand what types of design strategies are important for improving quality of life here in this Phoenix neighborhood. Well, that wraps up our site visit to Edison Eastlake. We hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about what CAP is doing here. And I'll just reiterate the tremendous opportunity ahead of us here in Edison Eastlake as we see this massive redevelopment take place over the next few years. It's already been incredible seeing how this project and this neighborhood has been a platform for bringing together different CAP researchers, bringing new researchers into the CAP family. The work that's happening here is connecting us to professional practitioners, community-based organizations, other non-governmental organizations, as well as city staff, and of course to residents themselves. We see what's happening here as a wonderful bridge between CAP and community members themselves. We look forward to updating you over the coming years on what's happening here, and we hope you'll tune in to our social media feeds, to our academic publications, and other communication channels. Again, thanks so much for taking the time to join us here in Edison Eastlake. And with that, we will take you off to another part of the wonderful world of CAP.